The AGM obviously was originally intended to be a reasonably happy day for us. We were reporting the fact that we'd exceeded our prospectus forecast in 2018. We'd grown at about 7.5%. We'd kind of hit a revenue target of 153 million and delivered an EBITDA result of 16.9 million, 10.3 NPAT, paid a 3.3 cent dividend for the full year. And basically things were going well. Unfortunately, a couple of days prior to the AGM, we had to issue some guidance for the full year based on what we'd seen in the first quarter. That guidance was that we would achieve a revenue of between 170 and 180 million dollars at a GP of 29 to 30%, which is in our historical range of sort of 29 to 32. For a full year EBITDA result of 16 to 17 million dollars. Obviously, the revenue and EBITDA target included a full year of the acquisition we made in May, which was a statewide tyre wholesaling business in South Australia. I think we were kind of surprised really by the reaction the market had to that guidance. We don't resile, of course, from the fact that there were some expectations created which we didn't meet. We see it as our responsibility to set that right, and that's what we're beavering away doing as busily as we can. We do that, of course, we don't do that in a laboratory where we've got perfect control over the conditions and forces that impact on our ability to deliver. We do it in a kind of ocean of market forces, and sometimes we get some headwinds and sometimes we get some tailwinds. At the moment, obviously, we're confronting some headwinds, which resulted in us moderating our growth expectations for the full year. Those headwinds, I think, can be summarised in a few easy bullet points. Essentially, subdued consumer demand. We're seeing our customers are telling us that wallets aren't opening. We'd had a reasonable first quarter year on year. Our growth target for the full year did depend a reasonable amount on getting a good outcome on the launch of our AT3 product, which occurred during August and September. That was tracking okay, below expectations, but okay. In October, it really didn't meet our growth target. So suddenly we had 4 months of performance where we were tracking above last year, but not quite achieving what we needed to for growth. We ask ourselves the question, do we think in the succeeding 8 months will make up the difference of the bit we missed in the first 4 plus getting the growth in the next 8? Decided no, we wouldn't, issued the guidance. Here we are. The headwinds that influence that decision are things like the extent to which that subdued consumer demand might remain. Tyres are a necessity, so we rarely see a permanent difference in demand as a result of consumer sentiment. The trick for us, of course, is to make sure that when consumers do come back, they come back into the categories of product that we're offering. We have a couple of price rises coming through in October and November throughout the group. That's Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. We put up prices to offset the impact of devalued currencies in each of those marketplaces. We probably missed that from slightly from a timing perspective. Our GP result in the 4 months to the end of October probably included about $400,000 of lost GP due to some timing issues around the price increase and how the stock flows out of our warehouse when we're suffering from a higher import price due to FX. We've got another price increase coming through in the third quarter, which is attributable to a higher cost of raw materials, in particular a thing called carbon black. We've seen pretty much all factories increase price for that purpose in the US. We're yet to see it happen here. We've factored that into our calculations, and so we expect to see another 3% or so price increase probably around March, April. These sorts of price increases, as I've indicated before, tend to be universally applied throughout the industry. These are raw materials that every manufacturer uses. No manufacturer is particularly integrated into the supply chain to the extent that they can control that outcome. Although it's an oil derivative product, it's not necessarily a function of the oil price. What we're being told is that raw material is going up because of capacity constraints arising from Chinese factories having to meet environmental standards. So the output's reduced as a result of that, hence the price coming up. The key for us, I guess, is to make sure that our competitiveness is not undermined by these price rises as they flow through. We're obviously looking to see what other people in the market are doing. In relation to the FX-induced import price rise, we've seen most independent wholesalers like us already put their prices up, so that issue's under control. It's less obvious what the major manufacturer importers are doing. We're waiting to see. There is some amelioration, I guess, of the discounting behaviour of those competitors, and of course that a price rise can occur either by an announced change to the list, or it can be evidenced by a change in discounting behaviour of some of the competitors. All of those things taken together, sluggish consumer demand, price rises. We've got another new product coming out, the ATT, in February. It's in a segment we haven't been in before, so there's obviously some uncertainty around that. For all of those reasons, we put out the revised guidance. I was chatting to one of our shareholders about that, actually my son, who reminded me that a share market's not an economy and a share price isn't a business. So we're just going to keep focusing on what we can do the things, by that I mean things we can control. We don't see any need to undertake any radical shift in our strategy. We're continuing to be a brand building business where we will keep going with the AT3. It's still year-on-year growth. We hope we can, once consumers get a bit more optimistic, we hope we can see some good growth out of that. As I mentioned, another new product coming through in a less premium segment. This ATT product sits about 30% below the AT3, and it's an all-terrain tyre that would suit a larger SUV. Continuing to roll out our loyalty program, we've increased the Cooper customer platform in Australia by about 30 customers in the last few months, which is a good thing. The other things I've spoken about before, the TCC program to talk about the features and benefits of our products in a language that suits us rather than plays to the songbook of our competitors. New wheel products in MPC Dynamic in South Africa. We've established a new outpost for distribution in Namibia in South Africa, so we're moving out of the South African country into some of that more sub-Saharan areas there. And I guess generally, continuing to do what we do. The reduced share price is obviously going to have some impact on our merger and acquisition strategy. You would have noticed in the guidance that we'd highlighted the fact that we'd spent about $125,000 on due diligence costs, which are an unusual or abnormal cost in the 4 months to the end of October. That was obviously expenditure associated with some of our M&A planning. We're still getting our head around what implications the share price has for the structuring of those kind of transactions. Obviously, at the moment, we would be trading at a multiple that's below the multiple we would be offering to purchase a business at. And I don't think it's sensible for us to assume that we could buy a business at an EBITDA multiple of less than 4 times. So using our shares as a currency for such a transaction obviously is extremely difficult, and we're thinking about how we can recalibrate to get some of those deals put to bed.